What's up? Hope you're all having a lovely end to 2023. I'm here to just answer some of the silly, goofy little questions that my subscribers are throwing at me. Before I go into that, though, all of the videos on this channel are scheduled up until February. So I'm thinking of adding some kind of members thing where you can access the videos earlier than they're scheduled to be released. Let me know if that would be something that would be interesting to you in any way. I don't really do anything to provide value to my Twitch subs other than pretend that I answer their questions every now and then give them a token episode like this. So I'm trying to think of ways that I could actually provide value to the people who help support me, apart from giving them free content to consume all the time, of course. But yeah, let me know what you think. Because I could put out some of the videos on my YouTube channel up to a week before, because like I said, I've got them scheduled for the next 2 months. For now, though, let's get into some of the subscriber questions. So, first one is from Lou, the goated Pokemon video editor, who says, I've kind of summarized the questions at the bottom here, but I'll read out the full question. You're very open as a person, says Lou, as most streamers have to be. Lots of stories and informational tidbits about you have been put out there, but what's something we may not know about you? And this was also followed up with another question by somebody called Kane, who said, do you have any weird talents you haven't talked about before, playing an instrument, doing backflips, etc.? Weirdly enough, Lou also followed up asking how quickly I thought I could learn how to do a backflip. So let's address that one first. I don't think I'd ever learn how to do a backflip. I'm not particularly athletic. I'm not particularly... it's not actually... Athletic is the wrong word. I'm not particularly gymnastic. I'm not flexible. I don't have good balance. I've never learned how to do anything like that. I think it's much more likely that I'd seriously hurt myself trying to learn how to do a backflip than be able to accomplish it in any kind of reasonable time frame. As for the first kind of part of the question, any instrument, I don't consider that to be a weird talent. Yeah, I've played instruments before. I've played quite a lot of guitar. I grew up playing the violin to about a grade 4, grade 5 level, so not super good, but, reasonable. Not horrible sounding is about... When you play the violin, you start off, sounds dreadful, and then it starts to get palatable. It's okay, but they're very basic songs, and then it starts to get to really nice stuff. And I was just about that middle point where it doesn't sound dreadful, but it doesn't sound great either. And I used to play violin in orchestras, ceilidhs, but I never really got good enough to actually enjoy playing it, whereas I've always enjoyed playing guitar. I played drums for a little bit as well, but not very much. I had a drum kit and I used to enjoy playing, but they're quite big, quite difficult to fit into an area of your house. And I also vaguely played piano a little bit growing up, which underpinned a bit of my musical knowledge, but I wouldn't really remember how to play much on the piano anymore, apart from Fur Elise, I think, which everybody can play. If you think you can't play it, you can play it. It's latent knowledge hidden into all people's heads. It just happens. As you wander around, once you get to a certain age and you've listened to enough music, you can just sit down at any piano and knock out Fur Elise. As for something else other people may not know about me, that's actually quite difficult. I feel like I discuss almost everything that is going on in my life. Basically, the thing that you don't know about me is the thing that you forgot to tune into that stream about. That's basically it. So it'll be the answer will be different for all of you. Go back and look through my YouTube channel. All right, so next question. Let's bring it up. So the next one is from Meth, who says, you've moved around a lot, both for professional and personal reasons. Do you have plans to have a permanent home, and where would you like to live? And yeah, that's, relevant question. I don't know why exactly you asked this now, but it happens to have a very relevant answer, which is the UK. That's one of the reasons why I moved back home now, is because I wanted to have a permanent residence in the United Kingdom. I guess in theory, I could think about doing it somewhere else in Europe had Brexit not made that much more difficult. But yeah, the two main options open to me are the US or the UK, and I'd much rather live for extended periods of life, raise family, that kind of thing in the UK. That's going to make the professional side of things a lot more difficult. Thankfully, VCT Americas have been very good at being able to work with me like that. But as more and more people try to move back to the office in general, in the wider sphere of work, I think you'll see esports as well trying to pull things back from being a bit more remote into being centralized, unless it's entirely remote. And that's tricky when a lot of esports things, for absolutely no reason, are centralized in LA in America. Why would you possibly centralize things in LA just because the developers live there? God, there's absolutely no reason. I mean, they already have the infrastructure there now, but when they were first making the decision back in whenever they kicked things off, please just choose a different city, for God's sake, anywhere. You could do things for a quarter of the price if we all went to Arkansas or something. So, third question, coming in from Dinosaur Cola, who says, now that Overwatch League is over, and remember, these questions were submitted quite a while ago, so some of these questions are right from when Overwatch League was announced that it was ending. Do you have any interesting behind-the-scenes stuff that you can share? And Get Deluxe also followed up and said, would you and the boys come together for a random remembering podcast for Platinum Overwatch or Foreheads to reminisce? And that is something that Mr. X talked about as well, and would be quite fun, but I don't want to tread on toes. Platinum Overwatch has already got a good thing going over there. One of the things I don't think we ever talked about publicly, though we might have done, because basically we talked about all the behind-the-scenes stuff anyway, that was funny. When 222 was first announced, there were all of these rumors. One of the big problems, just as a bit of a tangent, with doing any official developer league, so whether it be Overwatch League, whether it be VCT, whether it be basically anything that is the official main broadcast of the game, is that if there is some rumor in the community or a report in the community, the developers, the game company doesn't like you talking about it, even though on any independent broadcast, people are going to be discussing it. So on Platchat, for example, we will discuss all sorts of different reports from around the scene and various other interesting topics that wouldn't really have a comfortable home on the VCT broadcast or the Overwatch League broadcast, because the people running the ship don't want that to be a focal point or want to wait for the official announcement or something like that. So you end up with these really desynced situations, one of which was 222 being released in Overwatch. So when 222 was being locked in, which is a long time ago, I mean, at the moment, Overwatch is bloody 5v5, isn't it? So that's just nonsensical almost at this point. But when that was happening, it was rumored in the community for so long. We could have had really interesting discussions on the desk about it, about the pros, about the cons. You know, in theory, the developers could have told us, hey, 222 is on the way, and so we want these conversations to be optimistic towards 222. You can still have some concerns about it, but know that eventually we are going in that direction. You know, you could have built some really good segments that would have helped create community narratives that were more, I mean, even if you want to think about it in a puppeteering kind of way, more useful for the developers, or if you want to think about it in a more just broadcast perspective, more interesting than what we were talking about at the time, which was just la 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 la, I'm sure that's not going to happen. Nah, we were not even going to talk about it. So anyway, when I think we signed off for the season, or we signed off for a stage or something like that, by all going like this, we were like, bye, and there was two of us putting up two of our fingers, and we got a talking to about that. I thought that was just quite cute thing to do. You know, it's like, it's not even really a leak, it's not us saying it, it's just something it's hinting at it, it's building anticipation for an announcement. They fucking hated it. One of the lead developers was extremely upset about it, and not that they were a particularly aggressive person, but made it very clear to us not to do anything like that again, which I think was one of the most boring things that the Overwatch League ever directly communicated to us, which was like, no, you must tread the corporate line in these kind of things. Don't have any fun about it. I don't know. Developers just tend to get super attached to official announcements, as esports organizations also do, and they've had to learn because of the leaking culture. Right, so let's move on to the fourth question here, which is going to come from Meth again, which is, how do you feel about your influence on esports by inventing co-streams? And for starters, we've got to tackle the question. It's just a wrong question. I didn't invent co-streams. I said at the time when I was co-streaming Overwatch League that I had stolen the idea from a 2016 broadcast, I think. So that was 2.5 years earlier, that Counter-Strike had tried to do, where they had a bunch of the Counter-Strike analysts mostly and one pro player, I believe, in a room together watching the major. And in Counter-Strike, they've also, because anybody could watch the game using the in-game client, there've also been these no majors clubs that I think Richard Lewis hosts those as well, which were very similar concept too. But this one was actually in a studio, the one that I really like the idea of. So, but as co-streaming became more popular, as watch parties became more popular within wider esports, yeah, it did feel like I was on kind of the forefront of the wave of that, because that stuff never really kicked off. It never picked up any steam in 2016, but it really did pick up steam in 2019. And I think one of the big reasons for that was that streamer culture was picking up at the time as well in a way that it hadn't in 2016. And there's also a large amount that needs to be associated with Fortnite, because Fortnite, as far as I'm aware, though I was never big in the scene, was also doing that at around the same time. I think just after the World Cup. Somebody more in touch with the Fortnite scene could probably correct this timeline a little better. But from what I've spoken to very vaguely with Bala, he was saying that there were a bunch of people doing it around the same time as I was with Overwatch League. People were starting to do it in Fortnite as well. And a lot of the games, so one of the big things that really was a detriment in Overwatch, which was really valuable in games like Counter-Strike and some other titles as well, is that a lot of other titles, you have some way of viewing the game from inside the game, even if that's a replay viewer that, you know, you can hook up afterwards or something. But in Overwatch, we just had to do it with a full screen cam and a little timer. And we've already had one event recently, the Afrika League, where we had to do that in Valorant as well, because it was not because they wouldn't give out co-streaming rights, but because they wanted it to be exclusive to Afrika TV, because that's who was running the whole tournament. And so they didn't want co-streamers on Twitch or YouTube or something doing that, because you're taking viewership away from the product that they're trying to push for, which is their streaming platform. So I don't have an influence on esports in that way. I don't think that I was influential outside of the Overwatch sphere. I think I was influential inside of the Overwatch sphere. It definitely introduced the Overwatch League and Overwatch personalities much more to the idea of co-streaming. But outside of Overwatch, I don't think I was influential in any way. All right, so another question from Gladiator, who says, do you enjoy playing puzzle games like Baba Is You and Superliminal on stream, as they're some of my favorite VODs videos to watch, but you always seem to get into an argument with chat? All right, first of all, I love arguing with chat. That it makes my day. I just enjoy arguing with people about random shit. It doesn't matter what it is. It's a lot of fun. It's even more fun when it is just some random stuff that doesn't really have too much importance attached to it. As for the two titles that you talked about, Baba Is You, I think, got quite repetitive. If it had been a shorter game with more differences between each level, I definitely would have played more of it on stream. I think it's still a great game. If you're interested in a really good puzzle game, I would highly recommend it. But as for streaming content, I didn't think it really worked that well as streaming content. Superliminal, though, was incredible. Every puzzle that you came up to required really lateral thinking. It was a very visual game, so it worked well on stream. Baba Is You is not a very visual game. It's more of you're looking at something visual and trying to translate it into the abstract, trying to translate it into text-based syntax. But Superliminal is directly all about perspective. It's a fantastic viewing experience. On top of that, you had games like Portal. Loved playing that on stream. That was a fantastic game to play. I haven't played Portal or Portal 2 in a while on stream. I used to play quite a lot of it back in like 2017, which, 6 years ago at this point. But it's quite hard to search for really good puzzle games off stream without spoiling yourself to a lot of the puzzles. So I really enjoy the experience of hopping into a puzzle game and learning live, but that requires you to have a very good recommendation that you trust, because either what you're going to get is, if you like jumping in blind to games, you're going to get a lot of shit games if you just try it without really good recommendations. Or if you test them beforehand to make sure that they're really good, you spoil a little bit of that playing blind. If you play for half an hour or an hour off stream to make sure that it's a really good game, then by the time you redo all of that half an hour off stream, on stream, it just feels a bit weird sometimes, I think. I could try doing that a bit more, but I don't really enjoy it that much. I'd rather just wait for the creme de la creme, you know? Of which I think Superliminal actually was. Let's get to a question from Punchline. Are there things about the esports industry that you wish you'd known before you entered it? Or if you were to begin your career again, are there things you would have done differently? Those are definitely two different questions. So there's another related question here as well from Sushi, who said, what's one thing you wish you'd been able to do during your time at Overwatch League? So I think let's start here. There are still things that I wish I knew now while I still have my job in esports. How long is it going to take for this space to stabilize? And by stabilizing, I mean, how long is it going to take for the space to become monetized effectively to the point where it doesn't just rely on VC capital? Because if it continues to rely on venture capital investments so heavily, in a time at the moment where interest rates are at a massive high, it doesn't look like it's going to be able to grow. In fact, it looks like it's going to get a lot smaller. So that's something I'd love to know right now. And I don't think anybody has the answer to that. And I think that really informs a lot of other stuff too. If you knew that the space was going to be able to be monetized effectively in the next 5 years, and that would then allow for further growth to be added on top of that because there's already a basis of sustainability, at that point, investment coming in just increases the amount of monetization rather than trying to come up with ideas of how to monetize it at all. Then that really affects how long you can see yourself working in the career. Do I need to try to pivot out of this within the next 5-10 years? Really no way of knowing. I've tried to set myself up right from the very beginning of getting into esports because I knew that it was an unstable business. I've tried to set myself up from the very beginning with as many diverse approaches as I could possibly have to being able to gain experience, gain skills, and gain revenue streams. Those are what I always tell people when they're getting into the esports industry. You need to gather a lot of different skills. You need to essentially be an esports polymath in order to survive long term, I think. So you have to be able to do a lot of different things. If I got cut from doing all on-camera stuff because they decided that bald people are too ugly, and I had to do behind-the-scenes work, I could try to go into a producer role, or I could try to go into an esports journalist role, something that I've done before. Now, esports journalist role is not really paying that well either. The space there is way worse than it was when I first started getting into esports, but it's certainly possible. You could also make a bunch of YouTube stuff without actually having your face attached to it, as plenty of other like branded gaming channels do. So one of the things that I would have tried to do differently, though, to talk about what Sushi brought up, is there anything I wish I had done whilst I was at the Overwatch League? I would have tried to get producer experience more quickly. There were other people in the Overwatch League like Jonathan Reinforce and like Hex as well, who were forced into a producer role more so than wanting to jump into it. And they, I think, both developed really good skills and experience off the back of that would also help them succeed at a range of other things. And when Jonathan went back into doing on-camera stuff, I think he was, personally, I think he was better for the other experience that he'd had. And I would have really liked to have done that. I've certainly had some... The producer job in esports is split into a bunch of different things. So I haven't had a lot of experience in the control room, building shows and pressing the buttons to enact them and running the show live, but I've done a lot of segment building, a huge amount of segment building, run of show building, that kind of stuff. But getting that producer experience earlier would, especially the stuff towards the control room, I think would have been really valuable for me in my position right now. And I think the number one thing that I wish I'd known before I entered and wish I'd put effort into as I entered was building up a YouTube channel seriously. If I had started back in 2016 when I first started doing Overwatch, if I'd started then applying serious effort to a YouTube channel, and what I mean by that is uploading regularly, uploading quality content, uploading with YouTube titles and thumbnails that make sense and are attractive. It's indescribable what a world of difference that is compared to what I actually did, which was just upload random shit willy-nilly on the internet without a theme, without a brand feel, and without any effort into titling or thumbnailing. And I still managed to build up some level of a YouTube channel that is useful for me to springboard off with more effort now, but all of that would have paid significant dividends had I started it in 2016. Had I even started it in 2018 or 2019 when my co-stream started blowing up, I would have seen massive amounts of growth. And I definitely missed out on that. And here's the other thing, actually, about that period of time in 2019, that it's not that I would have done it differently or I wish I'd known something, but I think it's related. If I got to do it all again and I got to pick between both multiverses, I'd love to go and explore what would have happened in 2019 if I just said, fuck it, I'm just going to do full-time content creation. If you remember, that was about the time where Courage JD had gone from doing... he was a streamer that got about 1,000 concurrents, who was also doing casting. He was doing commentating for Call of Duty, and he decided to go full-time content creation in 2019, really focus on YouTube content creation, really focus on his Twitch stuff, and he blew up. He went crazy. Now, he also hopped on the Fortnite train really early on and did the classic thing of trying to piggyback on as many hot topic games as possible, which certainly is, I think, the most boring way of doing content creation because it forces you to stick to the things that are popular. But I don't know the guy. I don't know whether he found it boring. I'm just saying I would find that more boring, I think. But I'd like to, if I could have experienced both avenues of the multiverse and then gone back and picked whichever would have been more interesting or successful to me, that would have definitely been something that would have been very interesting. I've always wanted to do full-time content creation. The problem is, if I actually tried to do full-time content creation, it means that I have to give up on what is the majority of my salary at the moment that comes from commentating and the stability. Because even though commentating is not that stable, when you're one of the best in the world at it, it is quite stable, as arrogant as that sounds. So it's not a bad job at the moment, and giving that up to try to do full-time content creation is a large risk. But back in 2019 would have definitely been the best time to do that, rather than now, for example. Messenger One, classic of these subscriber Q&As, has another question, which is in a totally different aspect. What is your favorite British panel show? Any chance you do more recreations? So I don't think I've ever run a recreation of a British panel show, actually. Maybe we've done some on VCT or something, but the one that I think of the most is Baby Blue Daxa, who did the Would I Lie to You one. I suppose we did like a bit of a Would I Lie to You kind of segment on Platchat Valorant recently when I was doing the production for it, because that was an idea. God, I can't even remember. Apologies, I can't remember the name of the Twitch viewer that threw that idea at me as well while I was live one day. But anyway, I think two of the best formats in British panel shows are Would I Lie to You, which we've already done quite a bit of, but I think is still excellent, and Taskmaster. I think Taskmaster is incredible. I've always wanted to do an esports Taskmaster. I think it would require a lot of planning and quite a bit of funding. And most of the funding would go into the editing and camera operators, because having a space is not that difficult, and having task ideas that are cheap is not that difficult. But having multiple different camera setups to be able to capture all of what the contestants are doing, and then having the time to go and edit that and turn it into a show that makes sense, that is where the cost would come from. I would love to do it. If I ever get to a point where I'm doing full-time content creation, that is number one on my list of creative concepts that I want to turn into reality. Obviously, we'd have to try to dodge the copyright problems, but to be honest, when things are this small, you'll get away with a lot of stuff. I mean, like the Ludwig's Mogul Moves show is basically just a straight-up Jeopardy ripoff, but you get away with it because really those videos on YouTube are not popular enough and being broadcast on television to attract the ire of the original publishers, at least as far as I'm aware. The other show that I found recently that I really love the format for is Guy Montgomery's Guy Mont Spelling Bee. And it's just a spelling bee that features 5 comedians, and each round has something odd going on with it. I can't explain the format of it too much better than that. It's not as good of a format idea as Would I Lie to You or Taskmaster, but the execution of it is really good. And it's, again, something that I think would translate really quite well to an esports audience too. Here's a question again from Lou, who opened up this episode, saying, what are your favorite brands of scotch, mezcal, or booze in general? And Get Deluxe also followed up here and said, how would you say your taste in alcohol has changed and developed as you've aged, become more financially secure, and dealt with Beth's allergy? For anyone who doesn't know, she's pretty deathly allergic to wine. Have you found you like things you didn't before with being unable to have wine around? Yeah, I didn't used to drink a ton of wine anyway. I was just starting to get into wine when I moved to America in the year before I started dating Beth. So I definitely do like red wine, but I don't miss it a huge amount. And I drink it when I go traveling, basically. But Beth, working as a bartender, introduced me to a range of different alcohols that are really awesome, a range of different cocktails as well, and certainly having more disposable income to be able to spend on them and test whether better quality alcohols taste different is something that has very much changed my taste in alcohol. My family would only ever buy the cheapest possible alcohol and were very convinced that there was no real benefit to buying more expensive stuff. I heavily disagree with that. And I think it's a reality of their financial situation, really. And my financial situation growing up was that you just kind of tell yourself that, yeah, I'm not really missing out on anything. The cheap stuff's just as good. It isn't. It definitely depends on what you go for. Not all expensive stuff is good, but the good stuff does tend to be more expensive. What would I say my favorite brands of Scotch, mezcal, booze in general are? Well, I think Scotch and mezcal are my favorite types of booze. I think some excellent mezcals that I've had. I can't remember at the moment I'm drinking a bit of Kikiriki. Mezcal is something where I haven't really paid as much attention to the brand names particularly. One of them that's easier to get in the UK is Illegal, of which the Illegal Hoven is really good. Then the problem is I didn't really pay that much attention to the brands because I knew that when I moved back to the UK, I wouldn't be able to get them anyway. But for anyone that lives or is visiting Austin, Texas, there's an amazing mezcal bar above a bar called Whistler's. So take a look at Whistler's. It's on East 6th Street, and there's a bar above there that's only open on some evenings, but it's a mezcal bar that has small amounts, so small bottles from all over these tiny distilleries. And it's fabulous. So many different types of variety, whilst all being extremely good and, yeah, delightful. Just the smoky feel that you get from that is fantastic, which is why I tend to like the peatier scotches as well. Favorite brands of scotch that I've had. The one that I'm really enjoying at the moment is the Old Ballantrae, the peated malt. That one's really good. The Kilchoman Senaig was quite nice as well. I like that a lot. I like the peaty ones though, like the stuff from Ardbeg. Pretty much everything from Ardbeg's really good. What else? I mean, for stuff that's really easily available in supermarkets, Laphroaig is really nice. There's also other supermarket available brands in the UK. There's stuff like Airston or Ardmore, Lagavulin. There's tons of them. I did get an opportunity to try some Daft Mill in a bar in Edinburgh that they had there for very cheap compared to how much it is if you buy a bottle of it, and that was extremely good stuff as well. Though I must say, once you get to that point of the expensive end, I find it only a fraction better than the other nice stuff that I like. So I certainly wouldn't see myself spending outrageous amounts, hundreds or thousands on a bottle. Not happening. That's where I pull the plug, you know. There's only so much improvement. At the end of the day, it's something that goes in my mouth. Although, we won't explore that much further. So, second to last question, Sin says, what's your favorite form of exercise or physical activity? I don't enjoy exercising unless it's a sport. I don't know why. I think maybe my brain has just been twisted from years of playing sports growing up to think that if you're running, but you're not running after a ball or after an object or running with a purpose, that it seems useless. I don't know whether other people feel like that as well, but the idea of going out and jogging, but you just end up at the same place you were and you haven't accomplished anything other than the jogging, that to me seems really weird. I do enjoy hiking, but the purpose of it to me seems to be you are going up to a hill to get a nice view, or you're going and enjoying the nature, which never seems to really be the goal when you're jogging. That people tend to go jogging in an area that has a lot of flat ground, so it's not as difficult for them, or you know, jogging somewhere near them or something, you know, that kind of thing. But I particularly enjoy sports. I play quite a lot of badminton. I love badminton. I think it's fantastic. Real nice blend of technique, but it's easy to pick up for beginners. It's got a lot of fast shots. It's a really quick game, but a lot of the speed of it doesn't come down to your reaction times. It comes down to your technique and your movement. I also really like tennis as well. I've played quite a lot of squash, but I wouldn't say that I have as much affinity for squash as I do for tennis or badminton. What other sports? I used to play quite a lot of basketball when I was growing up. When I was like 14, 15, 16, I played a ton of basketball, but I haven't played for years and years, and now I'm pretty shit. I can pretty much still do very consistent layups, and that's it. That's it. Get the ball in my hands and get rid of all the defenders, and I'll score you a couple points. All right. For everything else, I'm useless. And what else? That's about it, I think, in terms of exercise or physical activity that I enjoy. As much as you wouldn't believe it, I do really enjoy mountain biking as well. I don't get out anywhere near as much as I would like, partly because I didn't have a car back when it was this year in the summer. So I only recently got a car like 2 months ago, and now it's been extremely cold. And the idea of going out and mountain biking when it's been snowing and windy and freezing doesn't sound particularly great. But I do enjoy mountain biking a lot, and I'm planning to get some attachment for my car so that I can take my bike out and use it more, because there's a few places around me that I can actually cycle to, but they're not as good as if I hop it on the back of my car and go off somewhere. So that's a 2024 idea. And the final question for this subscriber Q&A is pottery update, and I don't have too much more to show. I've already shown a couple pieces, a blue mug and a red mug that featured some cool kind of pattern stuff on them. But a lot of what I was doing in pottery recently was making those mugs and then making some smaller Christmas decorations, and a lot of them died in the kiln. So I will do probably another pottery video when I have a lot more to show. At the moment, it's just a couple of mugs which I've shown on stream, and then a third mug that the glazing didn't really work out. It was supposed to be a very bright red glaze, and it's a paint-on glaze. The paint-on glazes are a little more finicky, and this one crawled, which is where when the glaze is fired, it liquefies to some degree. It's basically like glass that's then going to bind with the clay, and but areas of that molten glass clumped up and ran rather than applying evenly around. So even though it was applied evenly at the beginning, when it heated up, it got heavy and it ran down the mug. So there's patches of bareness and there's patches of heavy blobbed area, and the color wasn't nice. So basically, most recent pottery stuff was a bit of a failure, apart from a couple of pots, of which the one of them is this one, which was with some coffee beans on it. So has like a bunch of coffee beans, which is going to be a Christmas present. And there was another one where I drew some nice leaf designs on it as well, which I don't have to hand right now. But yeah, that's the pottery update. I'm still enjoying it a lot. I'm getting slightly better, or at least more experienced. So I'm gonna hopefully have some stuff to show again. I don't know, probably in February, I would imagine. Although some of it will be distracted by VCT. All right then. That's it for my subscriber Q&A on this channel. I'm going to be putting out another subscriber Q&A actually on my Valorant channel with all the Valorant specific questions. And then I'm also going to put out another subscriber Q&A on the Valorant channel with a bunch of Plat Chat related questions as well. So look out for those. Those will be coming over the next, few weeks. I don't want to pepper them all at once. But keep an eye out on the Valorant channel for those. And in the meantime, have a lovely Christmas period and a good end to 2023. I hope it's been kind to you this year.